Mountaineer Nation, let's ride.
But Don Nealon's Mountaineers enjoy walking in where angels fear to tread. As the hills of West Virginia resound with the sounds of Golden Blue football. Here is Harrison trouble. Stiff arms. The would-be tackler comes down over the 25 to 20. Goes around about it to 15 to 10 to 5. A touchdown, West Virginia. He did it.
Takes the Slater one-on-one with the defender. Look at that one.
West Virginia football. They don't know what that's about. They don't know what it's about. West Virginia football. We're all our table. They can shoot up on fire. No more air and helmet. Let them know. Leave no doubt tonight. Leave no doubt tonight. No doubt. They shouldn't have played the old Golden Blue.
It is a great night to be a Mountaineer wherever you may be.
What's going on, Mountaineer Nation? Welcome back to the Country Roads webcast. As always, I'm Jordan Cruz coming to you here this Monday afternoon. You know, last week we did our top graded players video live as a live stream and then kind of broke it off into the smaller versions in case people like it that way, and I enjoy doing it that way. So figured do it again this week. Last week we did it on Saturday prior to, you know, the Big 12 conference games. This week, like I said, doing it here on a Monday. Got the day off this Monday, so figured why not, you know, fiance's out with some friends, figured I'd take the time to do this, and I did a Big 12 preview on that one towards the end, so this one we'll do a Big 12 wrap-up towards the end of this show. But if you're tuning in here on YouTube or Twitch, I'm live on both on the Country Roads webcast pages there. Appreciate you tuning in, and if you want to, go ahead, drop questions, comments, concerns in the chat. I'll get to those as I go throughout. I know most people may be at work, so, you know, these midday ones, the engagement live isn't as much, but even if you're tuning in on the playback, really appreciate you doing that as well. And while you're in here, if you would hit that like button for us, that'll really help this video's performance and help future videos performances as well. And hit the subscribe button if you haven't already. Helps us, helps you, helps get more of this Mountaineer football content out to Mountaineer Nation. Having said that, let's get into it a little bit here with the top graded players for the West Virginia Mountaineers in Game 6 against the Baylor Bears. Let's get the more negative side of the ball, I guess, out of the way, you could say, in a way, with the top graded players for the Mountaineer defense, according to PFF, the top 5 highest here. Let's go here. Number 5, we have free safety Aubrey Burks, who I think is no surprise showing up here with the performance that he had, getting an interception, forcing a fumble. I think he was around the ball a lot, making plays. So no surprise he ends up as one of the top 5 highest graded players for West Virginia on PFF here in Week 7 of the season, Game 6 for the Mountaineers. And I think the most surprising thing you'll see here on this top 5 graded players for the defense is no defensive linemen in the top 5 highest graded players. I think Jordan Jefferson was 6th highest graded. Dante Stills was 8th, so they were still up there. But this is, I think, the first time all season there hasn't been at least one defensive lineman. And I know that's definitely shocking with how Baylor's passing numbers were up and, you know, how the Mountaineer secondary has struggled. But I digress and move on here to the 4th highest graded Mountaineer against the Baylor Bears, and that was Jasir Cox playing that spear position for the Mountaineers. Also, probably, you know, one that you could expect to be on here. 2 fumble recoveries, including one that he picked up and ran all the way back, showed his athleticism, showed his speed for the touchdown, and what was one of the game-changing plays there really in this game against Baylor. And then at number 3, we had free safety at number 5 with Aubrey Burks. At number 3, we have the Mountaineers' other free safety, the two kind of splitting time there, splitting snaps. And that's Hershey McLaurin, the JUCO transfer, coming out with a 70.1 defensive grade in this game against Baylor. And, he was making plays as well. I liked him in the run game coming up, making some tough hits. Looks like he's a good tackler, and he's long. I think he's 6'4", 6'5", if I'm not mistaken. So him and Aubrey Burks both bringing something to the table there at the safety position, and hopefully we're just seeing these guys maybe hit their stride now that we're midseason. Both guys are kind of newer to the program. Aubrey Burks, of course, has been here, but he's still young, being only a redshirt freshman or a sophomore, and having dealt with injury bug a little bit since the early this season. I believe he suffered that in the Pitt game, if I'm not mistaken. And then of course Hershey McLaurin, completely new to the program as a JUCO transfer, didn't get here till the summer, but both have seemed to be making more plays the further we get along in this season, and both pop up here on the top 5 highest defensive graded players. Number 2 for the Mountaineers, defensive end Sean Martin. So I just completely was wrong about there not being a defensive lineman on this list when I said that earlier. I completely neglected that Sean Martin was here at number 2. But I guess what I should have said was the familiar faces that have been on here, that being Jordan Jefferson and Dante Stills, weren't in the top 5 highest graded defensive players here, as they were both just outside. As I said, Jordan Jefferson the 6th and Dante Stills 8th. But Sean Martin is the lone defensive lineman that does make an appearance this week for the Mountaineers, and in the game against Baylor, he grades out as a 71.2 defensive grade. And we saw him split time with Taj Alston. I believe Taj Alston actually had more snaps. I think it was 36 to 26 snap count wise. Sean Martin getting the 26 snaps there. If you haven't checked out the new series I started, the snap counts video, check that out to be 100% off the top of my head. I think that's what it was though. But Sean Martin did make an impact on the plays that he was in, pressure in the passer and some good plays there in run defense. But the one that stands out, of course, is forcing the fumble that Jasir Cox returned for the touchdown, as Blake Shapen, when he was still in the game for the Baylor Bears, escaped containment. Sean Martin smacked his arm, forced the fumble. Jasir Cox picked it up and did the rest. And Sean Martin shows up as the second highest grade defensive player for the Mountaineers with a 71.2 grade. And number 1 might surprise you as well, and that's another player in the secondary, as it is one of the corners for the Mountaineers, and that is Rashad Ajayi, the transfer from Colorado State, coming out with a 74.2 defensive grade here in the game against Baylor to be the top graded Mountaineer on defense in this one. And I know that's probably surprising with the secondary struggles and how the Mountaineer pass defense struggled, but I think if you look at it, a lot of the times he wasn't covering the man that they were targeting, which was Gavin Holmes a lot. They were going to that other side after Wesley McCormick went down. I think, 7 plays into the game, I believe he had 7 total snaps. And after he went down, they kind of were targeting whoever was in there, which, was Wilson Lamp at times. And then Jacoby Spells, a lot of the game, we saw Jacoby Spells, take his lumps in this game, get beat a couple of times. But the other side, I guess, Rashad Ajayi really progressing well. The same thing can be said for the other safeties I mentioned. Rashad Ajayi, new to the program as well, and continues to progress, and I think is really starting to maybe hit his stride as well. He has been the one consistent player the Mountaineers have had since Charles Woods went down, I guess you could say. Wesley McCormick, I know, has taken a lot of flack. Jacoby Spells, I think, has a bright future, but of course that's a true freshman. And then Andrew Wilson Lamp, we've rarely seen. And then this game he gets the targeting, of course, ejected, and will be out for the first half against Texas Tech. Mumu, they were trying to play more at safety. Maybe we'll have to see him more at corner. And then Malachi Ruffin, when we've seen him have to play corner, he's struggled a little bit as well. So I guess out of what West Virginia has had, Rashad Ajayi has certainly been the best until Charles Woods can get back on the field. And that shows up again in this game against Baylor, as he's actually the top graded player on defense with a 74.2 defensive grade. So that'll do it for the defensive player grades. Let's flip it over to the other side, where Mountaineers have had more success this season, and take a look at the top 5 highest graded players on offense for West Virginia against the Baylor Bears, beginning with number 5, and that's the Mountaineer quarterback, JT Daniels, of course, coming out with a 72.4 grade in this game. I think for the most part overall, really, did his job. Throws were on target. The only one thing that you can say was the negative aspect, the one knock on him this game, of course, was the interception. Bad decision. Shouldn't have thrown that ball. Like I said, I've said it before and I'll say it again. I think he saw the linebackers back to him, thought he could squeeze it in there. Didn't work out that way. Ill-advised throw at that situation. Situational awareness not so great right there in that time. But that's one thing that has been the lone knock, I guess you could have on JT this year, as much as we trust him throughout the games, is some in late games. The Pitt game, not so much. That one's not his fault. That was a wide open man. He hit on target. But Kansas, we saw that happen. And then in this one against Baylor, West Virginia up 3 with a chance to seal it, and forces a bad throw there that gets intercepted. So let's watch that moving forward. Hopefully it doesn't become a trend there in late game situations, and his situational awareness improves in those situations when West Virginia really needs him to be clutch. But he would go on to redeem himself. Great game management on the ending drive there for the Mountaineers that led to the game winning field goal from Casey Legg, and JT Daniels has been solid throughout the season, so you can't harp on him at all, or the Mountaineer offense in general for the most part, really. I think JT's been a great quarterback for the Mountaineers this season, and it's been nice to have a signal caller that you trust back there when the Mountaineers really need the offense to score this season with their defensive struggles. Moving on to the 4th highest graded player for the Mountaineers in this game, and that's one that we definitely, I think, thought would be on here offensively, of course, and that is center Zach Frazier, coming out with a 72.7 offensive grade here, and he had the toughest matchup he's probably had up to this point in the season, and maybe the toughest matchup he'll have all season, with Siaka Ika, the Baylor defensive, the nose tackle there for Baylor, one of the best players not only in the conference but in the country there on the defensive line. And one of the reasons that coming into the game, Baylor was one of the toughest run defenses, not only in the Big 12, but in the nation. And in the Big 12, they were the number 1 with a 90.7 run defense, according to PFF here. And you see Zach Frazier really hold his own in this game against Ika, and a lot of that in one-on-one situations when he did that. So it was really nice to see, and a big reason the Mountaineers were able to do something I know I didn't think the Mountaineers would be able to do going into this game, and probably a lot of others didn't as well. And that's run the football not only with some success, but with great success against a tough Baylor run defense to the tune of over 200 yards. And a big credit of that goes to the Mountaineer offensive line. And, of course, Zach Frazier, who's the man in the middle making the calls and anchoring it all. And, of course, to go along with Zach Frazier, he's accompanied by another West Virginia native offensive lineman here in the top 5 highest graded PFF players for the Mountaineers against Baylor. And that is left tackle Wyatt Milum, who comes out with a 74.2 offensive grade in this game against Baylor. As I said, the Mountaineer offensive line has really, I think, done a great job for the most part this season. It has been an area that they've improved. We were wondering if it would be. I know Matt Moore's a guy that's taken a lot of flack prior to this season, but I think this season we are seeing now he pretty much has the pieces that, are there and guys that they can develop, and they are developing and they are improving. Guys like Zach Frazier, guys like Wyatt Milum, guys like Doug Nestor are playing the best football of their career right now, and we're seeing the Mountaineer run game have the best success we've seen it have in some time, and that's because of the offensive line. And in pass protection, they've done a much better job too, specifically on the edges, and the credit to that goes to Wyatt Milum protecting JT Daniels' backside, and he did a great job of that in this game and has throughout the season, as has the Mountaineer offensive line in general. He comes out as the 3rd highest graded Mountaineer with a 74.2 offensive grade rather, and the top 2 highest graded Mountaineers on offense in Game 6 against the Baylor Bears, I think, are the 2 that you would expect them to be, the 2 guys that had career days, starting with number 2 right here, running back Tony Mathis Jr. coming out with a 75.0 grade as the second highest offensive player for the Mountaineers. And can't say enough about how much he stepped up. We were questioning if the Mountaineers would be able to run the football, not only because the things I mentioned previously about Baylor's run defense and how strong it is, but we knew C.J. Donaldson was out for this game, and he had kind of been the lead dog in the backfield for the West Virginia Mountaineers. Despite the fact that Tony Mathis had started all season, everyone wanted to see more CJ, and it was like Tony Mathis was an afterthought, even though with the staff he was, and I'm talking throughout the fan base. And this game, he was just kind of showing up like, hi, I'm still here. Remember, I'm the starter, and I'm going to show you why the coaching staff put me in this position against the best run defense in the Big 12. And he certainly did that, and hats off to him there. 20-plus carries, over 160 yards, 2 touchdowns, including a nice one in the 4th quarter where he read it great on a counter play, made a man miss, and then showed speed that I really didn't know he had to outrun people and get to the end zone on a 30-plus yard touchdown run that really was one of the big difference makers in plays in the game, and he was a difference maker in the game all game, and a big reason the Mountaineers were able to come out on top, as was the top highest graded Mountaineer and a guy that's really hitting his stride as well when you talk about that. going throughout the season, and a guy that has potential that is through the roof, and that is the wide receiver, Kaden Prather. And look how high this grade is right now, 89.8. That is super impressive from Kaden Prather, the young Mountaineer receiver. We heard, throughout the game, I know I wasn't at this game, so I was watching the television broadcast, and the announcers were talking a lot about how Baylor was giving extra help towards Bryce Ford Wheat, and he was a big focus of their game plan, was trying not to let him do too much. And I think he ended up with like 5 catches, 51 yards. So decent performance, but you could definitely tell they were focusing on him. But in doing so, they left Kaden Prather, one-on-one in a lot of times, situations. And with that extra help on Ford Wheaton, Kaden Prather was able to really shine in this game. You saw the Mountaineers go to him in a lot of third down situations, clutch situations. One of those third downs, he not only caught the pass, got the first down, but broke a tackle, beat another man to the end zone, made a play there for his touchdown. And you got to love his performance. Over 100 yards receiving and a receiving touchdown. Best performance of his career by far, and definitely the highest grade he's received, and one of the highest offensive grades I've seen a Mountaineer player receive yet this season, with the 89.8 player grade in this one. So that is the top 5 highest graded Mountaineers on offense and defense in week 7 of the season, game 6 of the West Virginia season, specifically against the Baylor Bears, as they come out on top 43-40 and get back on the winning track to move to 3-3 and 1-2 in the Big 12 Conference. And speaking of the Big 12 Conference, I will wrap up this short little live stream by recapping just kind of some of the scores throughout the rest of the conference and what happened in the Big 12 as we continue to now pretty much hit the halfway point of the 2022 season. Crazy that we're already here. But before I do that, I just want to appreciate anyone that's, tuning in on these rare midday streams. I'm trying to make them not so rare, do these more often to try and switch it up a little bit, not make everything be, late at night, do some midday ones too. But, I know it's harder for people to get in on them, especially when they're on weekdays here like this one on a Monday afternoon. But if you are in here, appreciate you tuning in. If you want to chime in, go ahead, drop a question, comment, concern in the chat there. I will hit any of those before I get out here after I finish this Big 12 recap. But appreciate you tuning in, whether it's on the Country Roads webcast, YouTube, or Twitch for this one. While you're in here, hit the like button. If you're not in here live, if you're in here watching this on a playback, you can go ahead and hit the like button as well. Still yet, it'll really still help this video's performance, help future videos performances, which in turn helps the channel continue to grow throughout Mountaineer Nation here on YouTube as we continue to try and grow the West Virginia brand. And another way you can help do that is by hitting the subscribe button if you haven't already. Helps us, helps you, and like I said, gets more of this Mountaineer football content out to Mountaineer Nation. That being said, let's talk a little bit about the Big 12 Conference this week. Starting with the noon games, West Virginia Mountaineers weren't the only team that earned their first Big 12 Conference win this week. Oklahoma was able to get theirs as well as they defeat Kansas 52-42, a shootout in this one. I think that's got to be expected with Oklahoma at this point. As much as their defense has struggled, their offense is going to have to really score points for them to continue to win football games, and that was no different in this one. Despite the fact Kansas being without quarterback Jalen Daniels, Jason Bean showed he was plenty capable as they battled with Oklahoma, but Oklahoma ultimately comes out on top. Number 19 Kansas drops another one, their second in a row. They may drop out of the top 25 now as they fall to 5-2, whereas Oklahoma now sits at 4-3 on the season, back on the winning side of things after dropping to 500. Last game, Texas continues their winning ways now here. 24-21 victory over Iowa State. Hard fought game. I think a lot of people expected Texas to pull away with this one. They started off hot, but ends up being a battle. But they end up getting the win. Didn't score as much as I think a lot of people would expect with explosive as Texas's offense has been in recent games, but they do find a way to win. Iowa State dropping to 3-4 now, and Texas moving up to 5-2, and they will probably move up in the polls as they were number 22. I haven't seen this week's AP poll. I'm sure it's out by now, but I'm sure they moved up a little bit there. And then the other game in the Big 12, of course, was the biggest one between the two unbeatens to kind of see who would be the top team in the conference right now moving forward. And that was between number 8 at the time, Oklahoma State, and number 13 at the time, TCU. I do believe TCU has since moved into the top 10, I'm sure. But Oklahoma State falls in double overtime to TCU, 43-40. TCU moves to 6-0. Oklahoma State falls to 5-1. Kind of funny. That's the exact same score as West Virginia's game, but it took them 2 overtimes to get there. So that's kind of unexpected with those high-flying offenses. I guess the defense were playing a little bit better. I didn't get to watch all that one. Caught the end of the fourth quarter and the overtimes. Was listening to that one, was watching that one, and then had Alabama, Tennessee playing in the earbud on the radio, trying to catch both of those. But, interesting week in the Big 12 and what seems to be an interesting season for the conference. As of right now, TCU, of course, sitting on top after they come out of the game with Oklahoma State with the win, in the top 10 nationally. But look out for Kansas State. They're still undefeated in conference as well, so don't count them out just yet. And Texas still has a chance despite having one conference loss. And in general, I think the conference is wide open. As you see, seems like a year where anyone can really beat anyone. So who knows? The Big 12 conference champion could end up with 2 or 3 losses even on the season. It's hard to tell. We'll see how it plays out moving forward in the Big 12 conference. HR picking stuff. See you in here. Appreciate you always jumping in when you do here with us at the Country Roads webcast. But that's pretty much all I got. Short and sweet live stream, but just wanted to hit the top graded players. Of course, enjoyed doing it live last week, so wanted to do it live again this week and talk about the Big 12 again. Last week I got to preview it. This week, recap it a little bit and just a little bit of what's going on around the conference. That way, us around Mountaineer Nation can know, who's the best teams in the conference when the Mountaineers go up and face them, and kind of know what you're up against when you're facing these opponents, as West Virginia will be facing Texas Tech, who is coming off a bye week. Obviously, you didn't hear me talk about them. They've got a quarterback with a great arm in Baron Morton, who's taken over as their starter, and they're going to sling it all over. They're going to try and run a super fast tempo, probably the fastest I've seen around any team that I've watched this season in college football. They've ripped off over 100 plays multiple times. I know against Oklahoma State, they had over 60 plays in the first half. So when you talk about getting to know the upcoming opponent, that's just a little brief synopsis. If you want to hear us talk about it more in depth, of course, look out for Season 5, Episode 142 of the CRW podcast, which we'll be releasing on Wednesday this week. It'll be out early Wednesday morning on all podcast platforms, and, of course, the video version here on our YouTube channel and on Facebook as well. And then, of course, you can find it on the WV Sports Now YouTube channel and over on the WVSportsNow.com website, as we are part of the WV Sports Now podcast network there over on the Sports Now family of networks. Now we really appreciate of those guys. And then, of course, following the Texas Tech game, going to go ahead and plug our live reaction show over on the Voice of College Football there. Mark Rogers, really appreciative of him letting us host those for the West Virginia channel. They're trying to go up there. So not only should you subscribe here, but you should go subscribe to the West Virginia at the Voice of College Football channel. You can see us there with post-game shows immediately following every WVU football game this season. And, of course, another ton of great West Virginia football content creators here on YouTube that cover the Mountaineers and do a great job popping up there as well. Guys like Mountaineer Paul Talks Football, Couz's Corner, Golden Blue Dude, Travis Kenobi. The list goes on and on of others that will show up there. So definitely something you should subscribe to if you're a Mountaineer fan, just like you should subscribe here. And I really appreciate you guys tuning in that have tuned into this live here. Like I said, midday. I know it's hard for people to tune in live, but if you're tuning in even on the playback, we're appreciative of that as well. And we will be back later this week, of course, probably on Thursday or Friday for a Q&A live stream when I'll have Steven and Bradley with me here as well. And you guys can really chime in, late that evening. It's usually 8, 9 o'clock-ish, 10 sometimes even on Thursday or Friday nights, our game week Q&A streams. Get our podcasts throughout the week where you get our thoughts, our previews and predictions, and then our live Q&A, on game week. Kind of want to let the Mountaineer Nation, the members of the Country Roads webcast community here, guide the conversation a little bit in there and hear your thoughts on the upcoming game and present your questions and talk about whatever you guys want to talk about. So that's kind of why we like to do those, and I've tried to do more of those this season, as well as more live streams in general. But look out for that moving forward in the future. Like I said, Texas Tech preview and predictions episode out in just a couple of days. So be on the lookout for that as well. And plenty of other Mountaineer football content coming here on the Country Roads webcast channel, as well as WVU basketball content, as that is just around the corner. Steven's going to be kicking off the CRW Hoops podcast. And, of course, we'll have some other video exclusive things basketball related here on YouTube, live streams and things like that. So no better time to subscribe than now with both seasons about to be in full gear. So hit that subscribe button and then hit that notification bell beside it if you are subscribed so you can be notified when we go live, especially with impromptu ones like this one. That way you'll know about it and know about any of the other content that we put out. Having said that, appreciate you guys tuning into this one. As always, I'm Jordan Cruz. And until next time, let's go, Mountaineers.